The city was alive with lights. Floating lanterns drifted through the air like tiny stars. Strange shapes moved across the sky, and tall buildings of glass and metal reflected colors that seemed impossible. The streets below were crowded with beings of every shape and size. Some had long legs, some had wings, and some had glowing eyes. In the middle of it all, a human boy stood with a small table, brushes in hand, painting pictures that shined with bright colors. He was a street artist, and today he was alone. People had stopped to watch. Some whispered in awe. Some laughed quietly, not understanding his work. But the human did not care. He moved quickly, dipping his brush in glowing paint, letting his heart guide each stroke. Every line he drew seemed alive, as if the city itself breathed through his art. High above, on a floating platform made of shining metal, a figure watched. It was tall, perfectly built, with smooth skin that shimmered in green and blue. Its eyes were sharp and cold. This was the alien ambassador's son, known across galaxies for his power, skill, and pride. No one dared challenge him, and yet today he was about to do something no one expected. The boy did not notice him at first. His mind was on the colors, on the shapes forming under his brush. But then a voice boomed from the platform, echoing across the street and the surrounding buildings. "I challenge you," the voice shouted. The boy looked up. A crowd had gathered on the platform behind the alien. They were dressed in fine robes and carried strange devices. Everyone turned to look at the human. Their eyes were full of expectation, some with curiosity, some with doubt. The human swallowed. He had faced challenges before, but never like this. He was just a street artist. This was the son of the most powerful ambassador in the galaxy. "Do you accept?" The alien's voice called again. It was strong, commanding, and full of pride. The boy straightened. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of thousands of eyes on him. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I accept," he said in a clear, calm voice. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some aliens gasped. Others laughed quietly, sure that the human could not compete. Even some humans watching from nearby held their breath, unsure what was about to happen. The alien's son smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone certain of victory. He gestured to the human, his movements precise and sharp. "Prepare yourself," he said. "You will see what true skill looks like." The human only smiled back. He was nervous, yes, but he had something the alien did not. He had imagination, heart, and courage. He had grown up on a small planet where humans were always smaller, weaker, and underestimated. But humans had learned to fight in their own way, not with strength but with cleverness, creativity, and determination. The crowd around the human began to quiet down. People leaned forward, wanting to see what the human would do. Some aliens looked confused. Some were skeptical. "How can a human compare to an alien trained from birth in perfection?" one whispered. The human did not answer. Instead, he picked up a brush and dipped it into a pot of glowing paint. The colors shimmered in the street light. He began to draw. Slowly at first, then faster. Each stroke seemed to tell a story. He painted the stars above, the wind that whispered through the city, the laughter of children, the sadness of lost moments, and the hope that kept humans moving forward even in the hardest times. The alien's son watched, at first amused. The human's art seemed messy, simple, and strange. But then something changed. The colors seemed to glow brighter. The shapes began to move as if alive. The crowd could feel it. Even the aliens, who had seen perfect performances their whole lives, felt a strange warmth. Something deep inside stirred. "Interesting," the ambassador's son muttered. He had never seen anything like this. Humans were supposed to be weak, unimportant, and small. But this one was holding the attention of everyone around, without power, without technology, without perfection. The human continued, not looking at the alien, not worrying about the audience. He only thought of the story he wanted to tell. And slowly, a quiet hush fell over the entire street. People stopped talking, creatures stopped moving, and the city seemed to hold its breath. The alien's son realized then that this duel was unlike any he had faced. This was not about skill or strength. This was about heart. And for the first time he felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. The boy's brushes danced across the canvas, painting not just with color, but with life itself. And the city, full of aliens and humans, glowing lights and strange machines, seemed to lean closer to watch. The duel had begun, but it was clear to everyone. This human was not afraid, and he was not ordinary. And somewhere deep inside, even the ambassador's son knew. This simple human might just change the way the galaxy saw him and his world forever. The crowd waited in silence. The human had finished the first strokes of his painting, and even the city seemed quieter, as if the floating lights themselves leaned in to watch. The alien ambassador's son stepped forward. His robes shimmered and strange instruments appeared in his hands. His species had mastered perfection. Every movement they made was exact, every note they played in tune, every gesture flawless. He began. Lights moved in perfect patterns above the platform. Holographic shapes spun and turned, forming castles, mountains, and strange creatures from his home planet. Music played, clear and sharp, rising and falling in precise rhythm. The crowd murmured in admiration. It was beautiful. It was perfect. But it was cold. No one laughed, no one gasped in surprise. No one felt the warmth of a human heart. The human watched, unshaken. He did not try to compete with the alien's technology. He did not try to make the brightest colors or the most perfect shapes. Instead, he took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and picked up his brush. He began to paint again, slowly at first. He drew the small things: a bird landing on a windowsill, a child laughing as he chased a dog through the streets, the glow of the sun reflecting on water. Then he drew larger things: families gathering around fires, people helping each other, humans working together even when they were weak. Every stroke told a story. Every color carried emotion. The alien's son frowned. How could simple shapes and colors compete with advanced holograms and perfect music? The crowd was still watching him, impressed with his skill. But now their eyes began to wander toward the human. They leaned closer, whispered to each other, and slowly a change came over them. The human painted a scene of a small planet, far away, with tiny humans standing together against storms and darkness. They were not strong. They were not fast. They could not fly or move mountains. But they had courage. They had hope. They had heart. And that heart showed in every brushstroke. An alien in the front row tilted his head. "Why do I feel warmth?" he whispered to his companion. "I don't understand. It's just colors and shapes." The human smiled faintly, not looking at anyone. He did not need to explain. He only painted. The crowd felt the story without words. They felt the struggle, the fear, the joy, and the hope. The human did not need machines. He did not need perfection. He only needed himself. The alien's son looked down at his instruments. Something inside him twisted. He had never felt this way before. No one had ever moved him with such simplicity. He had learned to impress with skill, not heart. But now he realized that something was missing from his performance: life, emotion, connection. He tried to continue. He made his shape spin faster. He added more lights. He played louder music. But the crowd was already shifting. They were leaning toward the human, not because he was faster or stronger, but because he was real. Because he showed what it meant to care, to feel, to live. The human finished the first part of his painting. He stepped back, letting the colors and shapes glow in the street light. The city was still. The aliens watched in shock. The humans around him cheered softly, proud of one of their own. And the ambassador's son realized something important. Winning was not about showing power. It was about touching hearts. He looked at the human again. There was confidence in his eyes, but not arrogance. He did not try to hurt anyone. He did not try to cheat or show off. He only shared what he knew: life, hope, and courage. The ambassador's son frowned, but it was no longer anger. It was curiosity. He had never seen such strength before. Not physical strength, not skill, not technology, but a strength that came from within. The human had something every being in the galaxy wanted: the ability to inspire, to move, to create connection. Slowly he lowered his instruments. The crowd noticed. Some whispered, wondering if he was giving up. Others stayed quiet, waiting to see what would happen next. The human smiled gently. He did not gloat. He did not mock. He simply nodded, showing respect. "This is not about winning or losing," he said quietly, so only those near could hear. "It is about sharing stories. About showing what is possible, even from the smallest hands." The ambassador's son paused. He could feel a strange heat in his chest, a feeling he had never known. Pride, yes, but not just pride in himself. Pride in someone else. Respect. Admiration. Something soft, something human, something he did not have words for. The crowd leaned in closer. Aliens who had never thought humans mattered began to see them in a new light. They were not weak. They were not unimportant. They could do something no alien could: make others feel alive, without power, without force, without perfection. The duel had only just begun. But in this quiet, simple way, the human had already changed everything. And the ambassador's son realized that he would have to change too, if he wanted to truly understand what strength meant in this new galaxy. The crowd had grown silent. Every eye was fixed on the human and the alien standing on the floating platform. The human's art still glowed in the street below, bright and warm. It was not just color on a wall or music in the air. It was life itself, captured in simple strokes, in gestures no machine could copy. The alien's son stared at it, confused. He had never felt anything like this. He stepped forward, thinking he could regain control. He began moving his instruments faster, creating larger shapes, louder sounds, more lights than ever before. The city lit up like a small sun. Aliens gasped. Humans whispered. Everything seemed perfect, but inside him he felt something missing. The warmth, the connection, the laughter and hope he saw in the human's painting. He could not create that. The human below smiled faintly. He had expected this. He had seen how aliens relied on perfection, but perfection could not touch the heart. He dipped his brush into a new color, a deep orange that glowed like a sunset. Slowly he painted a small boy standing on a hill, holding out a hand to someone different, someone strange, someone who looked nothing like him. Behind him, the sky was filled with colors no one had names for, and the wind carried whispers of friendship and courage. The crowd leaned closer. Even the aliens who had never cared for humans before, felt something stirring. It was impossible to explain. No machine could make this feeling. No perfect symmetry could capture it. It was raw, simple, and alive. The ambassador's son tried to ignore it. He focused on his own performance, forcing lights and sounds faster, brighter, stronger. But every time he looked down at the human he saw something new. The human's eyes were calm but alive. Every stroke, every gesture, seemed to speak directly to the soul of the city. The human painted stories of people helping each other. Stories of humans small and weak, standing together against storms, against hunger, against fear. Stories of kindness, courage, and hope. The colors shimmered like fireflies, moving and changing as if they were breathing. The alien's son could not stop watching. He had never felt the need to watch anyone before. He had been taught that strength was power, skill, speed, and precision. But this human had none of those things in the way he expected. Yet somehow he was stronger than any alien performance. Stronger than anything the ambassador's son had ever done. A murmur passed through the crowd. Aliens whispered to each other. "What is this?" one asked. "How can this human move us so?" Another said, "It is not about skill. It is about life, feeling, heart." The human continued, painting a large circle that connected everything he had shown. Humans, aliens, stars, cities, and nature. He did not separate them. He showed that even the smallest hand could touch the largest world. That even weak creatures could change great things. That even a simple story could move a crowd of thousands. The ambassador's son felt something strange. His chest tightened. His instruments wavered. His perfect lights and music felt hollow compared to the human's simple brush. For the first time in his life he felt doubt. He did not understand it. He had never lost. He had never needed anyone else. And yet, watching the human he felt small, not weak but small in a way that made him want to understand, to see, to feel. The human noticed the change. He did not look at the alien angrily, nor did he boast. He continued quietly, steadily, painting with patience, painting with heart. Every movement was full of life. Every color held a story. The crowd could feel it. They gasped, laughed softly, and some cried. The alien's son could see it in their eyes. They were not watching for perfection. They were watching for truth, for connection, for meaning. The alien realized the duel was no longer about skill. It was about heart. It was about what it meant to be alive. He looked down at the human and finally understood something he had never known. Being strong did not mean being perfect. It did not mean being loud or fast or flawless. Being strong meant touching lives, inspiring others, and sharing something real, something that could not be taken away by any machine or alien skill. The human stepped back for a moment, letting the colors glow and shimmer. The crowd leaned in, holding their breath. Even the ambassador's son could not look away. He had learned something today. He had seen a species he had underestimated, small, weak, and seemingly ordinary, show more courage, creativity, and heart than any alien could. And in that quiet moment, high above the glowing streets, the ambassador's son felt the first stirrings of respect. Not forced, not demanded, but earned. He did not yet understand everything about humans. But he understood one thing: they were strong in ways he had never imagined. The duel had changed. It was no longer a competition to show who was better. It had become a lesson. The human's simple brush, his patient heart, and his quiet courage had shown the crowd, and even the alien, that true strength came from within, from hope, from connection, and from the courage to be yourself. And for the first time, the ambassador's son felt a choice he had never known. He could continue trying to prove his superiority, or he could learn from this human who had already won, without force, without pride, without fear. The city held its breath. The duel was only halfway done. But the human had already changed the hearts of many. Even the most proud alien could feel it. And in the human's calm, steady eyes, one simple truth shone clearly. Sometimes the smallest hands could hold the largest power. The human stepped back and looked up at the alien ambassador's son. For the first time, the alien saw the boy not as an opponent, but as something greater. Someone who carried strength in ways he had never imagined. The crowd below was quiet, watching the human's glowing painting and the alien's shimmering lights. They felt the tension, the wonder, and the possibility that something extraordinary was about to happen. The ambassador's son clenched his fists. He had come to prove superiority, to show that aliens were perfect, precise, and unmatched. Yet, looking at the human, he realized that winning could mean something entirely different. The human had touched hearts. He had shown courage without force, beauty without perfection, and connection without expectations. And now the alien felt a strange urge, one he had never felt before, to join, not to dominate. The human lowered his brush slightly and smiled. His voice was calm but full of warmth. "You don't have to compete alone," he said. "Why not try creating together? Imagine what we could make if we combined what we know." The crowd gasped. Aliens whispered. "He is inviting the ambassador's son to collaborate?" one said. "Impossible," another muttered. Humans murmured in surprise, some smiling softly. The alien froze. This was not in the plan. He had expected resistance, fear, or even laughter. But the human offered partnership. He was not afraid of the alien. He did not see him as a threat. He only saw the chance to create something greater. The ambassador's son tilted his head, uncertain yet curious. No one had ever treated him this way. Slowly, he raised his hands and allowed his lights and holograms to move closer to the human's painting. The floating shapes began to hover over the colors, complementing them instead of overpowering them. The music that had been loud and precise softened, weaving gently with the rhythm of the human's movements. The crowd watched in awe as two very different forms of art began to merge. The human dipped his brush into a new color, deep purple, and added a streak across the glowing lights above. The alien's holograms shifted, bending and twisting to follow the human stroke. Together they created something no one had ever seen before. A dance of light, color, and emotion that felt alive. The ambassador's son blinked. He could feel the excitement building in the crowd. Aliens who had scoffed before were leaning forward, fascinated. Humans were smiling proudly. Something rare was happening. Two worlds, once separate, were blending in harmony. The human spoke again quietly. "It is not about who is better. It is about what we can do together. Strength is not just skill or power. It is courage, kindness, and the willingness to connect." The alien's son hesitated. These words made sense, but they challenged everything he had learned. For centuries, his species had valued perfection, domination, and pride. And now, in a simple street, a human child was teaching him something he had never understood. Yet, he could not deny the truth he felt in his chest. This was stronger than any display of power he had ever shown. He slowly moved closer, letting his holograms align with the human's colors. A new form emerged. Floating cities with glowing gardens, rivers of light flowing through alien forests, humans and aliens side by side, smiling, helping, sharing. It was not perfect. It was messy in some places. But it was alive, warm, and full of wonder. The crowd began to cheer softly. They could not believe what they were seeing. It was more than art. It was a vision of a universe where different beings could come together, learn from each other, and create beauty that neither could achieve alone. The ambassador's son looked down at the human, realizing something important. True strength is not about being alone. It is about knowing when to stand together. The human laughed softly, and the alien's son hesitated before smiling back. The warmth was unfamiliar but not uncomfortable. Felt good. They continued their work, side by side. Every movement of the brush, every shift of the light, every note of music blended perfectly. The crowd could feel the energy, the joy, and the understanding that something extraordinary had happened. Two worlds had touched and learned from each other. As they painted together, the ambassador's son realized that he had been wrong to think of this as a duel. There was no winner and loser here. There was only creation, learning, and respect. And for the first time he felt something he had never felt before: humility. Not weakness, but the humility that comes from seeing someone else's courage and heart. The human stepped back for a moment, looking at the glowing masterpiece they had created. "See," he said softly. This is what happens when we choose to connect instead of compete. The ambassador's son looked at the painting, the lights, and the glowing streets below. He nodded slowly. For the first time he felt respect for humans. Not because they were small or weak, but because they had something he could not buy, train, or command: heart. The crowd erupted in quiet cheers. Aliens and humans alike were smiling, whispering, and pointing. The city felt alive in a way it had never been before. And high above, in the floating platform, the ambassador's son finally understood. This human had not just shared art. He had shared a lesson that could change the galaxy. And together they continued to create, showing the world something no one would ever forget. That strength, courage, and creativity were not about being better than others. They were about sharing, inspiring, and building something greater together. The city streets glowed with color long after the human and the alien ambassador's son finished their work. The crowd had not dispersed. They stood quietly, staring at the masterpiece that floated between the street and the sky. It was a creation unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Light, color, and music moved together in harmony. Humans and aliens alike whispered in wonder. The ambassador's son looked down at the human, feeling something strange and powerful: pride, respect, and something he could only describe as awe. He had come to the duel expecting victory, expecting to show that humans were weak and inferior. He had not expected to feel small, not in a bad way but in a way that made him want to learn, to grow, to understand. The human had shown strength the ambassador's son had never seen. It was not strength of power or skill or precision. It was strength of heart, courage, creativity, hope. The human smiled softly, brushing a stray streak of glowing paint from his hand. "You don't have to try to win," he said. "There is no need. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply sharing what you have." The ambassador's son studied him. The words were simple but they carried weight. For centuries he had been taught that victory meant proving yourself superior, that power and skill were everything. Yet, here was a human, small and ordinary in appearance, teaching him a truth he had never understood. Victory could be quiet, gentle, and shared. He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. His voice, deep and strong, carried across the street. "You have shown me something I never knew. Humans are not weak. You do not win with force or perfection. You win with courage, heart, and the ability to inspire." The crowd murmured. Aliens exchanged glances. They had watched thousands of duels and contests across the galaxy, but this was different. There was no fighting, no destruction, no winner or loser in the usual sense. Yet everyone felt that something extraordinary had happened. Humans were not just surviving in the galaxy, they were being seen, respected, and admired for what they truly were. The ambassador's son stepped forward. For the first time he touched the human's glowing canvas, adjusting a streak of color to match the human's vision. "Together," he said, "we can make something greater than either of us alone." The human nodded. They worked side by side, letting their differences blend into harmony. Light met color. Music met movement. Alien precision met human emotion. And the city, watching silently, felt alive in a way it never had before. Hours seemed to pass in moments. The crowd, mesmerized, did not move. They could feel the energy, the courage, and the hope that the two creators shared. Humans who had doubted themselves now held their heads high, inspired. Aliens who had scoffed at the small planet now saw it differently. A human could teach lessons that even the most powerful alien had never learned. Finally, the human stepped back. The ambassador's son did the same. Together they looked at their creation. It was not perfect. Some shapes wobbled. Some lights blinked unevenly. But it was alive, warm, and full of meaning. It showed stars and planets, humans and aliens, hope and friendship, struggle and triumph. It showed that even the smallest, most underestimated beings could make a mark that would last across worlds. The crowd erupted in soft, unified applause. They did not cheer for one or the other. They cheered for both. They cheered for courage, for creativity, for the moment when two worlds had touched and learned from each other. And high above, the ambassador's son felt something he had never felt before: humility. Not weakness, but the recognition that there was much to learn, and that greatness could come from anyone, anywhere. The human turned to the ambassador's son and smiled. "You see," he said, "you don't need to prove superiority. You only need to share what you have." The ambassador's son nodded again. "Yes. And I see now that humans are stronger than anyone expected. Not because of force but because of heart." The crowd began to leave slowly, carrying the story of this moment with them. They would tell others across the galaxy about the duel where no one lost and everyone gained. About the small human who changed the hearts of many, and the alien who learned that strength is more than skill. The human returned to his quiet corner of the street. He picked up his brushes, ready to paint again as he always did. He was still a street artist, small and simple in appearance. But now, across the galaxy, he was known as the human who had taught aliens a lesson they would never forget. The ambassador's son stood on his platform, looking down at the human. He smiled softly, a real smile this time. He had expected a duel. Instead, he had found a teacher, a partner, and a new understanding. Strength, he realized, was not about defeating others. It was about inspiring them, connecting with them, and leaving a mark that could not be erased. And somewhere in the glowing streets, under alien skies and floating lights, the human smiled to himself. He had not sought victory. He had only shared his story, his heart, and his courage. And in doing so, he had won something far greater: respect, admiration, and a place in the galaxy where humans were finally seen for who they truly were. The city sparkled with lights, and for the first time humans and aliens alike understood a simple truth. Greatness is not measured by power, speed, or perfection. It is measured by heart, courage, and the willingness to connect. And in that moment, the human had shown the galaxy what true strength really meant.